I want to welcome all of you ladies. Tonight is our winch training class. It is our live class number 2. And tonight we are going over using your winch and recovery gear. This is something I know when I first started out. I was a little intimidated by the winch, and it took some time to just kind of get used to handling things and using the different pieces and feeling confident in getting out there and doing it. So, first of all, I want to introduce myself. I'm Kristen DeLibra, and I am from LadyJeepers.com. And I'm really excited to be here for this training with you ladies tonight. And so, with this program that I'm using, you guys can see me, but I cannot see any of the comments or anything coming in with this software I use to share the training that I'm doing tonight in this class. So I will jump back over and I'll look through comments and questions at the end of this training. And again, I'm going to kind of keep an eye on my phone every once in a while just to make sure that we don't lose the screens on the live feed like we did last week, trying to be prepared. So we're going to begin tonight with a quick overview from our class number 1 that we did last week. So really quickly, we talked about last week in depth. So tonight, I just want to make sure we're talking about using our recovery kit. So in our recovery kit, that should include gloves, a snatch block, a tree saver, a snatch strap, D-rings or soft shackles, a wrench or a pair of pliers, and then a strap damper. So we went over all those in depth last week. So I just wanted to make sure that you know what you need in your recovery kit so that you have that. And we talked about this last week. Make sure all of your recovery equipment, your winch liner cable, any of the cords or wiring are in good condition before you get out there and get in a position where you're going to have to use your winch or any of your recovery equipment. We want to make sure that it is all working correctly. So let's start out by talking about understand your winch remote. So we're going to start with the wireless remote. So, the newer winches, some of them are coming with the wireless remotes, and that's kind of a newer feature. We've never had the wireless. So I have my first one now with my JKU, and I love it. So we're going to go over just a little bit, understanding your wireless remote, because it's going to be just a little bit different than the remotes that you're using in the past. So first of all, you have to turn on the power at the back of the winch. That is the first step. Then you're going to go back and turn on the power on the remote itself. Then once the remote is on, you're going to select the winch option and follow the directions. And for ours, you have to hold the 2 buttons down together for the timer, and then it will engage. So now that you know the remote is active and it's talking to the winch. So that means that the in and out controls are now working and you're able to go and use your winch. So that's just kind of a quick overview on the wireless remote. Then also, when we talk about spooling, you're looking at the left side of your remote. It's going to show you like some little gears right here on the left side. When those are apart, you're at free spool. When they're together, that means that the winch is engaged. So that's when, on some of the older winches, you can actually turn the knobs. On this one, you're actually going to be able to do all of that on the remote itself. So if you go to the left side of the remote, where it kind of shows the gears at the bottom, if you click on that, then it's going to actually show the gears that are highlighted on this left side are going to pull apart, which means you're at free spool. So you can pull the winch line out, free spool, take as much line or cable as you want to. And then as soon as you hit the in or out button, it will re-engage and it'll show them locked together again, just like that. So now we want to talk about the traditional kind of cord plugs that go into a winch. So these are kind of your older winches that you'll see on a lot of vehicles. We have this as well. So it's going to be a little different. It attaches to the side of the winch. So you have to pull the plug, and that's where you're going to actually attach the cable to. And as you can see, there's holes in there. So you want to make sure you get them lined up. Then when we're talking about understanding our remote, so on this one, as you can see, there's a picture. It's going to show you out, and then under my thumb, it's going to show you in. So for this one, there's a little toggle switch. When you push forward, as you can see, it's letting the line out. And then underneath my thumb, if I were to pull back, as you can see, it's a little toggle switch. There's a little picture, and that's going to bring the line in. And now this one, you have to manually turn from engaged to free spool just by twisting the lever on the top. You always want to make sure it's engaged when you are using the winch. Like for these, you have to set it back to engage before you can use your in or your out controls. Whereas the wireless, you can just hit the button and it re-engages itself. With these older winches, you have to go and actually turn that knob on the top from engaged to free spool. And it's in free spool, you can pull the line. And then when you want to use your remote to be able to do line in or out, you're going to physically have to take the knob and turn it back to engaged so that it's actually going to work. So those are kind of your two different types of winches. There's some variations along the way. Both of these are worn winches. This one right here is the traditional winch, is what I'm calling it. It's an older model. And then the first one is the wireless model. So everything might be a little different depending on the brand that you have, but it's all going to be really similar. So now I want to talk about if you need to recover yourself. So in this video, we're going to talk about recovering to a tree with a straight line. So this is going to be where, if you were stuck and you needed to winch yourself out, there's a tree that is somewhat directly in front of you, somewhere that you're able to run your line straight to that tree. So this is going to be, I call it kind of a straight recovery, so that you're going to be going to a pretty much tree straight out in front of you. So before you start, anytime that you're going to have to get out and use your winch, you want to make sure that you put your vehicle in park, or if you have a manual transmission, make sure that you turn it off and you put it in gear. And you need to also engage your emergency brake. And if you were somewhere that you're on a hill and you want added safety, you can shock a back tire. That's where you're going to take, like a big tree stump or not stump, I guess, so like a branch, like a good sized branch or a rock or something that you can find that you can put behind the tire to chalk it so that it can't roll backwards for added safety. So this is important. Before you get out of your vehicle, you want to make sure that you've put it in park, or you've turned it off and you put it in a forward gear. So, first or second, you have your emergency brake on and you can chalk your tire for safety. Then you're going to connect your remote and have your winch ready. So if you have the wireless remote, like we just showed you, turn on the winch, turn on the remote so that it's ready to go, or connect the side cord to the side of the winch if you have a winch that's a little bit older. But that way the winch is ready to go. So in this video, we're going to go over the tree as an anchor. So this is going to be a straight line from your winch, your vehicle, to a tree. So first of all, you want to winch out or spool the line out to the tree that you're going to, and make sure to pull enough line that there's some slack and you have enough cable or rope that you can connect it without fighting with it. You're then going to take your D-ring, you're going to open your D-ring or your soft shackle, you're going to put your tree saver around your tree low, and then you're going to go ahead and attach your D-ring through both sides of your strap. And if you have a factor 55 hook, you can actually run the D-ring pin directly through the hook, just like that. So now you're connected. So then before you get back in your vehicle, you're going to slowly tighten the winch cable just enough so that it is snug. So there's just a little bit of tension on the line before you go to get in your vehicle. Then you're going to put your vehicle in neutral and winch in slowly. You're putting it in neutral because you want to allow your winch to be doing most of the work. Then you're going to let out a little bit of line so that there's some slack. Put your vehicle back in park, and then you're going to unhook everything backwards. So just like you did before. So you'll go ahead and undo the D-ring, You'll take the shackle off, and then you'll undo your tree saver and your D-ring as well. Always take care of your equipment. So think of rolling your equipment nicely, and then you're going to winch your line back in. And as you're winching is, as you can see that this line spooling, you're trying to have a nice even pattern across the winch with the rope so that you're making a line all the way across, and then a line all the way back, and then a line all the way across. And make sure that you slow down towards the end and watch your fingers as you bring your hook in. So whether you have a factor 55 hook, whether you have a traditional winch hook, always go slow. Make sure your hands are clear of that winch, and then slowly go to tighten it so that it is snug up against your vehicle. And then you will turn the power off to the winch, and then turn your power off to your remote, and you're ready to go. So one thing I wanted to mention in this video, when you go to turn and tighten your D-ring hook, so once you get your hook around you have your tree saver strap, and it's always low against the tree. So at the bottom of the tree, you're going to put your D-ring through. When you go to do the pin in the D-ring, you're going to turn it until it's tight, and then you're just going to turn it back a quarter turn, so that when there is a pressure applied to that D-ring, especially, if you're really stuck and it takes a little while, it takes some force to get you out. That way that D-ring doesn't bind and over tighten, and you can't get it back open. So you always want to tighten your D-ring all the way, quarter turn back, so there's just a little bit of slack in there, so that if it expands or there's pressure put on it, it's not going to lock on you, and your D-ring is going to be stuck to your tree strap on your tree. So another way that you can run your strap, and this is if you have the traditional winch hook. So as you can see, these hooks are a little bit different than the factor 55 hook. We talked about these last week. But if you're running this hook, you're going to have to run your line just a little bit differently. So when you're running your line, you're going to put your strap around the tree the same way that you would. But what you're going to do is you're going to take the two openings of the strap, and you're going to put your D-ring through there. Then you are going to run your pin through your D-ring. And again, you're going to tighten it all the way until it's snug. And then you're going to go back a quarter turn just to make sure that it's not too tight. And then you're going to pull your strap around the back of your D-ring. So back towards the pin. So the pressure of the strap is on the pin. And then you're going to hook your winch hook to the front of this D-ring so that it'll just kind of snap in place. One thing that I recommend if you're going to use and you have the hook is to go ahead and put it so that the hook is facing up. So the pin part that pushes down is facing up, so that as you apply pressure, you have your strap at the bottom of the tree, you have your winch line hooked to that D-ring. It's going to be pulling against that hook, and it's not going to be pulling here where you could risk this bottom part opening and it coming off of the D-ring. So always make sure you want to turn it and face your hook up if you're using a hook, and at the front of the D-ring. Now, you can also run your strap this way if you run some of the factor 55 hooks as well, and you can run your hook through the side of the D-ring and pull it around to the front and hook it in the same place that you would if you had like the hook, winch hook, instead of the factor 55 hook. So there's lots of different options. So if you have a traditional winch hook, it's going to be on that front part of the D-ring. And for different hooks can be used in lots of different ways. So as you can see with the different factor 55 hooks, with different hooks that there are out there, you can hook them to the front of the D-ring, and then you can also hook them to the pin of the D-ring as well, depending on what you're attaching them to. So now we're going to go to the next piece, which is using a snatch block to get yourself out. Oops, sorry about that, ladies. So when we talk about using a snatch block, you can use a snatch block a couple different ways. And this way I want to show you running it back to your vehicle. So you're going to pull your cable line out just like you did before. You're going to run the cable through your snatch block, and then you're going to take your D-ring and you're going to run it through your tree saver strap. Again, it's nice and low. And then you're going to run your snatch block through your D-ring. And again, you'll tighten the pin all the way and a quarter turn back to make sure that it isn't overly tight. So now for this example, we are going to run the cable back to the vehicle. So what this is doing is this is adding more strength with less wear and tear on the vehicle. So the vehicle doesn't have to pull as hard with as much pounds per pressure because the snatch block is adding a ratio so that with this added line, what it's going to do is the Jeep itself is not going to have to be able to pull as hard to be able to get itself out. So you'll run your hook back to the front of your vehicle. You'll run the hook so that, again, like I showed you, it's going to be in the front of the D-ring, and then you're going to put the pin through the front of your vehicle. As you go to turn it all the way, quarter turn back to make sure it's not overly tightened again. So this is how you would run a snatch block to come back to yourself. So that if you're really stuck or if you don't want to put as much stress on your vehicle, this would be the way that I would recommend doing this. This is going to make it so the vehicle is not working as hard. So then again, you're going to tighten the winch cable slightly, get back in your vehicle, put it in neutral and winch slowly. The reason you're in neutral is you really want to try to allow the winch and the snatch block to be doing all of the work so that you're not putting as much stress on your vehicle and your engine, your transmission, especially if you're stuck. Then you're going to let the line out so that there's some slack. And then we're going to do the exact same thing. And we're going to unhook by doing everything backwards. So you'll go ahead and undo the D-ring at the front of your vehicle so that you can undo and take your winch hook off of the front of your vehicle. Then you're going to run back and you're going to go ahead and you're going to disconnect the wire or the cable or the line, rope line from your snatch block after you undo your D-ring. So we're doing everything backwards. And then we're going to also be thinking about there's different ways to run this. So if you were going to have to do an angle to pull, usually pull somebody else, you would just run that hook directly to the other person instead of back to yourself. But I know we've had a lot of questions about using the snatch block with that ratio of running it back to yourself. And this is really important to know how to do and be comfortable doing so that you can help to, kind of keep the wear and tear off of your own vehicle by helping it out. There are lots of different ways and scenarios that you can hook up the snatch block that are going to help you in a recovery situation. And then again, as we're running the line back in, same idea, same principle of we want to have a nice uniform line across the front of the Jeep and back across in the winch so that the line looks like it's nice and flat. There's no wrinkles. There's no twist. There's nothing like that. And again, watch your fingers at the end as you go to close your hook against the front of your winch. So that's your snatch block recovery for yourself. But there are so many different ways that you can use the snatch block in lots of different scenarios. So I just wanted to share some of these examples with you. So the big one, I hope you can see my pointer, is, so this is going to be your straight pull, which is what we showed you when you're just running a straight line to a tree saver with your D-ring. This is the second example that we showed you. So this is a 2-to-1 ratio where you're going to run your winch line to a snatch block and back to itself. So what this is doing is when you're adding this, it is acting as a pulley system so that you have less force, so less pounds per pressure that you have to apply here to get the vehicle to move because you've added this here. So this is all physics and science, and which I'm not really good at, but this is something really good to know so that, if you're really stuck, this is going to help. So it's not going to put as much stress on your vehicle. And then also, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, but if you are pulling somebody else, so if you have to winch somebody else out, you always want to use a snatch block. I know Some people don't. You're going to hear different things. Sometimes they just want to do it quick, and I understand that. But just really keep in mind, anytime you're going to winch another vehicle out and your vehicle is going to be the anchor and you're putting all the pressure on your winch, you want to use a snatch block. So what you would do is you would run it the exact same way, but instead of running it to a tree saver around a tree, you would run the D-ring directly to their vehicle and then back to you. And again, everyone has different ideas on this, but if you are going to end up winching somebody else out, this is how I would always recommend that you're going to winch somebody, because you're going to really save your vehicle. And this third example is if you were to add in another snatch block, you're going to add the ratio. So this means your vehicle is now even working less. So if you were in a position where somebody was really, really stuck, that you were having to try to winch out, this is the next thing you can do. So if they had a snatch block and you have a snatch block and they're really stuck and you're having a really hard time getting them out and it's putting a lot of stress and a lot of strain on your vehicle and on your winch, you can add another snatch block. So you would run it just like we showed you. You would run your cable out to them with a snatch block and then back to yourself. But instead of hooking to the front of your Jeep with the D-ring, you're going to then run it through another snatch block and then to either a tree or another anchor. So that what's happening is every time you're adding one of these snatch blocks, it's like a pulley system. So every time you add one of these snatch blocks and it changes the ratio, what happens is there's less pounds per pressure of force that has to be used here to get the end result of the object moving. So that's why snatch blocks work so good. So really kind of start to understand how the different ways that you can use a snatch block to set it up so that you're setting yourself up for success. Success in getting somebody out, yourself out, but also the success of knowing that you're not putting extra strain and wear and tear on your vehicle and on your winch. So anytime you're having to pull somebody out, if you have to winch to somebody, always use this ratio of a snatch block. I know some people are going to tell you, especially if you're out on a ride, you don't need to do that. That's fine, but we have to do things the way that we want to and what feels right for us. And this is the safest way to do it. And in my experience, I've found if you are pushing for safety and doing things a correct way, people will normally back off a little bit, even if it takes a little bit longer. But to me, this is the only way to do it. And then if you're in a situation where somebody's really, really stuck, you're really going to have to use a lot of pressure. So a lot of pounds per pressure to get the vehicle out. Then I would suggest running that second snatch block and really kind of stand your ground on that's going to be the safest way to keep your vehicle safe as far as wear and tear and on your winch. You don't want to burn your winch out. You don't want to overheat it. There's things that can happen if you're putting too much pressure on it. So all of these things are just ways to help so that it's going to be easier and you're going to save your equipment. So this other picture, this is exactly what we showed you in the video of running a line to a vehicle through a snatch block back to yourself. So this is the only way I would recommend ever winching somebody else out. Now this diagram over here, this is the exact setup I had to use. Oh gosh, I guess about a month ago on a ride. I had to recover somebody that had ended up wedged between two trees. So this is the exact scenario I use, except I was right here. So I wasn't the stuck four-wheel drive. I was the winching four-wheel drive. And the stuck four-wheel drive was right here, but he's a little more sideways between two trees. So I had to pull the back end around and get him off the trees. But we use the exact same thing with the exact same angle. So what we did is we ran the winch line straight from my Jeep to the tree on the snatch block and then over to the rear of his vehicle. So that way we had a snatch block to create the angle to be able to pull. So in this one, they're winching, same thing, to the tree, to the snatch block, down to the vehicle that they're pulling. So they're pulling this vehicle from the front, and then the difference was I was here and I was just winching the other vehicle from the back to pull them around. So anytime you're going to need an angle to get to somebody, you always want to do it off of your tree and with your snatch block, so that you need to be careful if there's any other trees here in the way or over here. Again, I hope you can see the pointer moving. Let me look. I think so. Uh, but that way you don't ever want any interference with your line up against trees or brush or anything like that. We believe in tread lightly. That's why we believe in tree savers, so your lines don't cut in to the tree, but you're also helping to save your line as well, because your line is not digging into the tree where it can be frayed or it can be cut, but we're also protecting the tree itself. So we do believe in tread lightly, but you might have to clear a little bit of underbrush back anytime you're going to run a line, and winch at an angle so that your line cannot get caught, or ripped or anything against any overgrowth or any branches or anything that are hanging out. So always keep that in mind as well. So now that we've been talking about if you are going to recover another vehicle, so if you're going to be hooking your winch to another vehicle and you are going to be the anchor. So just like we talked about, you want to run your winch cable to them through, a snatch block back to yourself. So that there are times, like I said, you'll see people that'll winch somebody out this way where they're going to hook their line directly to the D-ring on the other vehicle. So this is a front vehicle of another, or the front of another vehicle that they would go ahead and hook their line to. And then this is to the back. So same thing, you're going to have your line, your hook, and you would use this as a soft shackle. So you would use a soft shackle or a D-ring here to hook to the rear of their vehicle, just so you would know how to set this up if you did ever want to do this. Again, I really recommend using a snatch block anytime you're going to run to somebody else's vehicle. But so say it was a really short pole or something like that, you can hook to the front D-ring of their vehicle, or you can hook to the back D-ring. With that said, do not hook to a stock bumper. Don't hook to a plastic bumper. Don't hook to a stock bumper, and don't hook to a actual ball hitch. You don't ever want to try to wrap anything around a hitch where the ball is sticking up. You always want to make sure you can remove that and use the actual receiver of the hitch itself. If they have something where you cannot do that, don't ever hook to the receiver that comes out with the ball on top. That's dangerous. You need to find a better point to hook to. Most all of us have aftermarket bumpers, so you're going to have the reinforced hooks where you have your D-rings, and those are safe to hook to. You just want to make sure if this were a stock plastic bumper, you don't ever want to hook to that because it's just going to break and tear off. Same thing with the back. If this was just a plastic bumper or if this was stock, you would not want to hook to the stock bumper that's back there, again, because you're going to tear it off or you're going to break the bumper. So knowing what you're hooking to is important, especially if you're going to be the recovery vehicle. So things to remember when you're using your winch. You are responsible for your own vehicle, period. And this is something, as ladies, we really need to think about. Sometimes when there's a situation, especially if somebody's stuck, the guys want to jump in and kind of take over, and that's great. But we are ultimately responsible for our own vehicle, and that is just that's how it is. If somebody were to hook somebody up to us, or somebody were to hook us up to something, and something happened and there was damage done to our vehicle, that's our responsibility. So that's why it's so important to understand the different ways to run your winch and how to run your different systems and your snatch block, so that you can hook up your own equipment. And then same thing, if you are going to winch somebody else out and you're going to be the anchor, always make sure that they hook themselves up as well, so that you are not responsible for their vehicle. You're only responsible for yours. So make sure you understand that. So if you're in a situation where you're not comfortable and somebody's trying to take over, and they want to, have you winch a certain way or at a certain angle or run to a certain thing, or they don't want you to use a snatch block, whatever it may be, that's where we have to kind of step up with our own voice and be confident in that we're responsible. So if something happens to our vehicle, that's on us, even if they were pushing us to do something different. So always know that. Find a nice way, polite way to say, this is how I was taught, or this is how I'm going to do this. This is how I want to do it. And stand your ground and run it the way that you want to, because you're responsible for your vehicle and for what happens. Another thing that we want to talk about is let the winch do as much of the work as possible. Uh, if you've been out on rides, I'm sure you've seen people have to winch before. We're not in a hurry. If you are in a situation where you have to winch or somebody else needs you, to winch them, there is no rush and there is no hurry. You need to take your time and reverse, whatever it may be, because you're putting a lot of extra stress on your transmission, your engine, and all your parts that are trying to work. And there's so many things that can go wrong if you're sitting there, kind of spinning your tires, trying to get traction. If you did get traction, if there's so many different scenarios to that. So you always want to try to let the winch do as much work as possible. So you always want to start in neutral, and then you want to do your winch line in, and you want to allow the winch to be doing the work. That is why the snatch block is so important, because if you're in a position where the winch is not able to get you out and it's too much pressure, add another snatch block, change the ratio, add another anchor point. The winch won't have to work as hard, and it's not going to take as much weight and pounds of force, like pounds per, I don't even know what I want to call it now, but it won't take as much to get you out. So you're not going to have to pull as hard with as much strength to get the movement. So these are the things that are going to help you too from braking. So as you're out there riding, taking these little precautions, understanding how to go slow, the correct way to do it, this is going to help you so that you're less likely to break as well, so that your parts are going to hold up just a little bit better. And don't pull against the pressure in reverse. This is another thing. If you think about vehicles and how they're made, what their purpose is, I'll share with you, we have a big 3500 dually. It's a 6-speed. It has reverse. But that truck has a hard time in reverse. And that's a big diesel truck. Well, it is built to pull in forward. That's why there's 6 forward gears. That's why first gear is so low. We don't have that same gear ratio in reverse. So our vehicle is not meant to pull weight and change and shift. It doesn't have all that capability in reverse. So anytime you're going to put a lot of weight and a lot of pressure against your vehicle in reverse, you really are stressing the transmission, the engine, and lots of vital parts. So if you're in a situation where you're having to be the anchor point and you're trying to winch somebody out, or you are being winched out backwards, you need to figure out ways to set up the extra snatch blocks instead of having to put your vehicle in reverse. So especially if you're the anchor and you're using your winch and the other vehicle as you're winching in, it's just pulling you towards the other vehicle, don't put it in reverse and start using the gas as you're winching in. Instead, stop, add that second snatch block, add the other anchor point, and do it correctly. Because otherwise you really risk doing a lot of damage to your vehicle, because they're not meant to have all of that resistance and all that weight against them in reverse. And again, like I talked about, take your time. So there's never a rush when you're doing a recovery. Take as much time as you need to. Do it correctly. If something happens, you need to add another snatch block, change an anchor point. That's okay. Because the biggest thing is getting yourself out or somebody else out safely and correctly and with the least amount of damage done to your vehicle and their vehicle as possible. So don't ever rush, and don't feel like anyone is ever rushing you. Anyone you ride with, should tell you that a safe recovery is the most important thing, and it's not a race. There's not a stopwatch trying to tell you how long it took you. So now let's have fun and enjoy some trails.